Okay, I'm going to call the meeting of the Sixtown Regional Planning Board, Finances, Transportation, Facilities Subcommittee meeting to order on May 4th, 2021 at 4:34 p.m. I'm Mike Naughton, the chair. We are holding this meeting via Zoom because of the ongoing pandemic. So we will be doing roll call, attendance, and votes. And we will be recording the meeting via Zoom. Is anybody else planning to record the meeting? Okay. So I'll do roll call attendance. Lynn Reynolds. Jane Dutcher.
Present.
Alan Genovese.
Present.
Greg Snedeker.
Present.
Welcome, Greg. And Mark Abrahams and Matt Abrahams are joining us as consultants, and Tanya Gaylord is joining us via telephone, the Pioneer Valley. Tanya, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on your title.
Director of Finance.
Director of Finance, okay. Okay, first order of business is to approve the minutes from April 20th. Jane did prepare those minutes, and then there were
I have not had time to mesh the last, I think it was your corrections that I didn't get in yet.
okay.
Perhaps after our town meeting is over and I get my life back, I'll have time to do it.
Well, I understand you've been busy, so
Yes.
do we want to just hold off on those, or, I mean, we can do that.
Well, I'm sure you don't want 3 versions out there.
No, so why don't we hold off? If you think you'll get a chance to do them, surely will at some point, right?
Right.
So we could hold off, just so people know, the various versions have been posted on the STRPB website. My understanding is that until we have approved minutes, it's okay to post draft minutes. In fact, it's kind of recommended so that at least there's something out there.
Documents.
Yeah, so welcome, David. David Young has joined us. So there is something out there, but we should get approval as soon as we can, but we can wait until the next meeting.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Mike, how do we know which version is which? I had printed out all of the April 20th, if that's the one you're thinking of, but it doesn't say version 1, 2, 3. Which one is the last one? Because I printed them all up.
There should be one on the website named number 4.
Okay. Thank you.
You can also find it in the email. It says draft 4 as an attachment. In case
Right, that's true.
if that's easier, Alan.
No, thank you. Yeah, I didn't look at the email. I was just printing out the minutes and looking at those. Thank you. Number 4.
Okay. So moving on to the next item.
Before you move on, can I ask a question?
Sure.
At a previous set of minutes, we added where they could find the recording. Do we want to do that as a standard procedure?
I'd say yes, if we can.
I usually announce that at our full board meetings. You can find all videos linked from our website to YouTube.
So you don't think we need to add it so they can just click on it in the minutes?
Oh, I usually, yeah, well, you mean the link to the video?
Yes.
I mean, you can, there's no reason not to, but you know, these don't have to be recorded. Minutes have to be taken, but they don't necessarily have to be recorded.
David?
Technically, we're supposed to have at the end of our minutes, a list of all the documents consulted. And they don't have to go with, they don't have to get filed with the minutes, but they need to be referential. So why not add the current location of the video as well?
Okay.
Okay.
Just
And we
do
should
it.
make sure to add that list of documents also. And actually, that occurs to me. Lynn, are you taking the minutes this time?
I can take the minutes, yes.
Since Michelle's not here. Thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to confirm that.
Welcome.
Okay, so we'll do the minutes next time, and those seem like good suggestions as additions to the minutes. Next item on the agenda is to meet with the Abrahams Group, and they had prepared a document that they wanted to go over with us, and we're also going to talk about generally progress and where they're at, where they're going. So Mark, Matt, you want to take it?
So Mike, you want to let me be host?
Sure. Actually, let me. Let's see. Okay, sorry about this. I'm sure there's a way to let you just be host, but
Go down to the share screen. Oh,
hang on.
you should be able to.
Well, hang on. I'm just gonna let him take over now for. But
I was
Greg,
gonna
you
say,
say-
you should be able to select multi-host sharing of screen when there should be an option down by the share screen. It's probably a little triangle next to it. If you click on
Okay.
that, you'll see, you're the host, so I can't do it, but if you click on the little triangle next to share screen, it should say
Okay.
multiple, enable multiple
Okay.
Zoom
Well,
guests. Try that.
let's try that next time. Thank you. I just gave it to Mark, so I can't do it now.
Can you see? Let me make it bigger. So Mike asked me to put together our understanding. A lot of this came from the second version of the minutes from last time, dealing with the design of the budget module. So the language you see here was literally copied and pasted out of the revisions I made to the first set of minutes. And the purpose of this is to get consensus as a basic high-level design of the budget module, meaning we want to have the ability to take the fiscal 22 Pioneer Valley and the fiscal 22 Gil-Montague budgets and be able to merge them. They have different funds. They have the DESI function codes, their location codes, the DESI state object codes, the DESI program codes are embedded in a different segment than what is a true program. But from both charts of accounts, we can create another column called program and code that program based on Pioneer Valley's and Gil-Montague's codes. They don't have a
Mark, could you just
subject
clarify what you mean by program?
right here. Sped, regular day,
Oh, I
after
see.
school,
Okay,
other.
sorry.
So both Joanne and Tanya have the codes, but they're not in a segregated column called program. Neither have subject. So we wanted to create an individual column for each segment because their code was in one column, distinguishing one segment from another segment. We want to add the program code. We want to add a subject code in separate columns. And subsequent to that, I want to add a PV versus GM column as to where that particular line item, the source of that came from either Gil Montague or Pioneer Valley. We eliminated the requirement to have grade or grade level. And I want to make sure that all of that is correct. So here we're talking grade or grade level is not needed by the finance subcommittee. Grade level is pre-K, K, elementary, high school, etc. And grade is grade. So
So grade level is included.
grade level would not be included. A, because grade level, we can include it if you want, but we got to be consistent, particularly with the possibility that Pioneer Valley may move grade 6, which would be elementary, into the middle school, which would then be middle school.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, other people should feel free to chime in. My thought is that we're kind of talking about doing two things here. One is taking the existing budgets for the two districts and trying to come up with a budget for a combined district. Okay, maybe really only doing one thing, but it's the combined district, as I see it, will be assumed to be doing what the districts are doing right now. So if sixth grade in Pioneer is not part of the middle school, then it isn't part of the middle school in the combined district. Because I see the goal is to end up with an understanding of A, what simply combining the districts would do, essentially keeping on doing what they're doing, but doing it in a combined setting. What would that do to the budget? Obvious thing, you could probably eliminate a superintendent, okay? But you might need to add an assistant superintendent, let's say, okay? So the exercise of combining the budgets needs to go through all the questions like that and say, okay, what would a combined district look like? It also should describe, generally speaking, what the program, the subject offerings, I'm not quite sure what the right phrase to use, but the subject offerings, the course offerings for the middle school and high school are, because our understanding is that a possible benefit of combining districts is that those course offerings could be enhanced. So we want to get kind of a base level of what they are now. And I believe the Ed Subcommittee is working on the details of that, but we want to understand how that plays into the budget. So we want to know generally, I think we need to know, we have so many French teachers, so many science teachers, so many English teachers at the middle school, high school level. So, so I'm thinking in that sense, we do need to know whether teachers are in the middle school, high school, or whether they're in the elementary schools. And maybe we can get that from location. Maybe that's all we need. But I don't want to just pass over to say, well, we don't need to know grade, because I think we do need to know whether it's middle school, high school, or whether it's not. But
I think we need to know grade.
Well, can I ask why? I mean, we're going to have to assume that middle school is going to be 6 through 9. Gil-Montague is already, 6 through 8. Gil-Montague is already 6 through 8. If they combine, I don't think.
not
right,
Gil, right?
No, but that's beside the point. I mean, to me, it's sort of like, if we're combining, we're gonna have 6 through 8 in the middle school. I don't think that's even a question. So the question is, to me, right, because how the enrollment falls after that, depending on where students decide to go, even if Gil is still has a 6th grade, there's still going to be a 6 through 8 middle school.
Exactly. And I think that we should not get hung up so much on making sure that we mirror the districts that are there. We should be looking at creating a district.
Right. I would also caution, though, by putting a grade on a particular subjects. Grades are, subjects are not really differentiated by grade. You can have a 10th grader taking algebra. You can have a 9th grader taking geometry in a class. Those can be mixed grades class, and they often are. So I would just be careful about applying grade level to actual courses. I think it's more important to have the course subjects being, the actual courses being offered, but that does not imply a particular grade.
So
But
can
it
I,
does apply junior or senior high.
Yeah, you could do that. I think that's what are the middle school offerings and what are the high school offerings? So yeah, sorry, I'm Tanya has.
it's okay. I was gonna just put a little input from the finance side, because right now neither Joanne or I's budget on the salary side is split by that grade level, but we did provide the backup to Mark of what the middle school, high school offerings are and whether those teachers were middle school or high school. I will say the issue right now is Pioneer actually has some of our teachers split teaching middle school and high school. So what they're being able to take our PVRS salary line and break it down to that level might get a little gray. So I think the idea of the cost of what that is separate from looking at taking those salary models and looking at, okay, this is how many they have, but assigning a cost to that, I think, is the second step of it. So if Mark takes what Joanne provided with, okay, we have 2 French teachers, 2 Spanish teachers, and I'm just making this up because I'm not looking at the document, and we have, 3 middle school math teachers or whatever it is, and then Pioneer has this, but with this number of kids, this is what we actually need. And then assigning, like I said, that average salary cost for a teacher to that to figure out what that looks like budget wise, because you don't know who the teachers are that are going to stay. So just like when we look at our budgets, we do assign the people that were in those positions the year before, but when we have vacancies, we have to assign a median salary to those positions, because we don't know if we're going to get somebody that's bachelor's level 1, year 1 straight out of school.
Tanya, let me break in and say that I agree, and I think we've talked about that, and that is what we're planning to do. What we want to do is know FTEs
right, but
necessary for the different courses.
Right, being able to actually take the budget itself though, and then take that salary and assign a subject or grade, that would be taking one budget line.
Well, I don't think we're talking about doing that.
Well, that's kind of the question. So Mark's talking about assigning projects to the budget. And if we're going to be assigning grades and subjects to the budget, that is what he's talking about, and trying to figure out what level you want the budget broken down to.
Mike, I have a question.
Well, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm looking at, I mean, this is definitely convoluted in a comprehensive process. So at Pioneer, where you have teachers sharing at the middle school and high school level, could you simplify it by just assigning a percent? If you have a teacher that's 60% high school, 40% secondary, then if Mark knew that, if that was next to that content area, if that's the way you're going, then he could just take the respective percent from whatever that salary is, working off of what you have now, because we don't know, you know, who's leaving and who's coming. So you have to work on what you do know. But if you suspect that that percent will stay about the same, then he could get his information from middle school to high school that way.
Well,
Just a
yeah,
thought.
I think the answer is yes. And
I
again,
think
I
splitting
think,
between middle school and high school is appropriate at the budget level, but assigning a subject by budget from the salary standpoint, I think is a huge project.
well,
Say that again?
let me, I mean,
Wait,
the way I see it, we are not talking, when we talk about a combined district, we are going to ignore all specific information about particular teachers and particular salaries. And what we want is to know what the courses are that are being offered and what the FTEs are necessary to offer those courses. And we're going to come up using the information from the individual budgets with, and we did talk about this a little last week when it was just a small group. But you know, the way I see it, we're going to come up with what we consider to be a kind of reasonable cost per FTE. And then, yes, Alan, you know, if it turns out to need 0.6 FTEs to teach a particular course, then 0.6 of that cost will be assigned there. And it may not correspond to any actual person anywhere, but that's what is called for in this budget. And I'd like to get back to Jane's observation that she thinks we're getting too hung up in trying to replicate what's there, and just kind of make sure we're all on the same page about what we're trying to get to here. Because my vision is not that we take the two existing budgets and kind of add them together and say, okay, there we go. What I see us doing is saying, okay, if we combine districts, we're going to have a certain program. We're also going to have certain other things, facilities maintenance and administration and those things. But we're going to have a certain academic program, which is the question mark. And so my take is, let's start by saying the academic program is going to be essentially what it is now to start as a baseline. That's one of the things we're going to play with going down the road. But we need to start somewhere. And so that's where we'll start, is where things are now, and assigning costs as I've described, see how that compares with the two districts separately, as one of the things we do.
Under
Jane,
and Mark,
does that, excuse me, can I just get Jane to react to
yeah,
that?
question.
I think I agree with what you said. My vision is that we develop a new district, making sure that we don't lose anything from the two existing districts, and that we add better stuff for our kids.
Right. But how do you, I agree, Jane. I think that's what we're doing. I think that the question mark is when we say add better stuff, that's something we need to work on with the Ed subcommittee, the way I see it. Okay.
I
And
see that as
we need to start somewhere. So if we say, okay, because maybe I should make it clear, when I say we'll take the two districts, we'll combine them, We'll see what it would take to do just what we're doing. I'm not saying that's what we want to do in terms of actually moving ahead with making one big district. I'm saying we need to understand what that looks like as a beginning. So when we say, let's add better stuff, we have a baseline to add it to.
Right, we know if we have the capability of adding those things that the education committee comes up with. And,
Right.
and we will have that information. Hopefully that's what we're building, is all of the basic information that we have, every little detail. So that when education comes back and says, we want to do X, Y, Z, and we will need this many teachers with these capabilities, we will be able to say, we have all but one of them, or we have all of them, or we have none of them.
Right. And if we add them, it'll cost this much and it'll do this to the budget.
Right, exactly.
So Mark, I have a question, and I'm just trying to think of this as combining the budget document that we have and how you've already broken out the sections of that budget and the information you've received from Joanne and I regarding how many teachers we have teaching what. Does it make sense to do what Mike was essentially talking about, of saying, okay, this is how many FTEs we have total between the two districts with the middle school, high school budgets per se for salaries, assigning an average cost currently with those teachers and just saying, this is how many teachers we have of each, and then letting the ed committee take it to the next level of, well, we don't need duplicate Spanish teachers, we don't need this. So these are the FTEs we would essentially have to either replace with other programs, other subjects. And then as those subjects are added back in, you would add those FTEs back in, but it would be a different subject at that average salary cost in order to figure out kind of what that budget would be for the combined programming that they're looking at.
I think that's what we just said in a different way. If we have the details and they ask us for information, we'll be able to give it to them.
Well, I think there's a question though, is because I guess the question is, do we assume that a combined district will have the same number of FTEs as far as teachers go at the middle school, high school, but that the courses will be different because there will be efficiencies in some courses, so we won't need as many FTEs in those areas, and that capacity can be freed up for other areas? Or do we assume that if we combine districts and we start with a baseline, we actually should end up with some number fewer of FTEs because there will be efficiencies, and that if we add on, then that's a whole separate exercise.
I'm not making any assumptions in that direction.
Okay.
Because I'm waiting to hear what the education subcommittee has to say. We very well could wind up with not needing the number of teachers that the two districts have. And that's why I like to look at it as creating a district, not combining. Because I think we need to create what we see as the best way forward for our children, and then figure out what we already have that fits into that picture, what we need to add to it.
Okay, well, I guess that's that last thing you said kind of crystallizes it for me. We have to figure out what we have and then what we have to add to it.
Right.
Right?
I mean, I'm hoping we're not going to be eliminating, but maybe we are.
Well, it seems, again, I see this as being kind of a two-step process. And the first step, the way I see it, is to figure out what we would need to replicate what we have in one district. The assumption being that would take fewer people because of efficiencies, okay? But we should be clear that nobody's recommending that we actually do that, okay? What we want to do is say, okay, that's the baseline. This is, this is the number of FTEs that are necessary to make that happen. Then we talk to the Ed Subcommittee and say, well, what ideas do you have for making this better? Okay, and they might have several different types of ideas. And it might, I mean, I don't know, I haven't talked to them, but it seems possible, especially after getting feedback, that you might have a proposal to say, let's expand in this area, and a second proposal to say, let's expand in a different area. And I think our subcommittee should be in a position to say, okay, we can cost out either one of those, as long as we know how many FTEs it's going to take to make those things happen. We can tell you what the cost would be to make that happen. But we need to have something to start with, and that something to start with is the baseline combined district. That's all I'm saying.
Right, but if they ask us for FTEs that are certified in a specific area, we need to know that, a specific discipline.
The Ed
Not
Subcommittee?
just that we have certified teachers, we have to know specifically what those teachers need in order to fill them into the new slots. You can't put an English teacher in a chemistry class. Well, you can, but how much are the kids going to learn? I guess it depends on.
Do you think that's our job, or do you think that's the Ed Subcommittee's job?
I think that's our job to be able to tell them we have 6 FTEs in chemistry.
Can I show
We
you
have
something?
4 FTEs in advanced mathematics.
Can I show you an idea?
Yes. No, I don't like that idea.
No, you don't like that idea.
Hold on, Jane.
None of us are certified in anything.
All right, can you see the athletic budget up on your upper left?
Yeah.
Let me blow this up a little bit. Oh, can you see this fine?
It's okay. It's okay on my screen.
So Matt and I were playing with this, and we've created a workbook combining the Gil Montague and the Pioneer Valley budgets. And on the left, this is athletics for Pioneer. You see the code in one column. We broke that out. We talked about breaking that out at our last meeting, or 2 meetings ago. And this gives the fund, the DESI function, what Tanya calls project, which is a combination of grade level, SPED, and regular day. State object code, a sub-object code, the location code, and category, meaning salaries or expense. What it doesn't have, it does have program here, but it's buried. And so creating a program segment, creating a subject segment, we can add a grade level segment if you wish. And so we structured this for each one of Tanya's cost centers.
Well, real quick, Mark, you mentioned grade level. If we know middle school, high school, I mean, well, by grade level, do you mean things like high school, or do you mean things like 10th grade?
Pre-K, K, elementary, junior middle, high school, after school.
Okay.
You can get that from the location code right here, but the location code wouldn't aggregate. Now it could aggregate into a middle, 7, 8, 9, or 7, 8, 9, and then into a high school, 10, 11, 12. Elementaries for the elementary schools. We can always add another segment, and then if you don't need it, we can eliminate it later. But what I thought, so just taking, this is elementary instruction. So we have a classroom, we have a library, we have a classroom instructional assistant, library instructional assistant, elementary salaries. We get several teacher salaries here. We got substitutes, we get adjustment counselors, we got nurses, we got physicians. What we don't have is, are they regular day or sped? We fill that in. We don't have the subjects yet, but we can begin to match that. And this will be coded Pioneer Valley, et cetera, et cetera. I could show you the other tabs here. And for Gil Montague, that's all on one tab. It's already pulled together. And we split Joanne's code similar to Tanya's. We've actually coded sped versus regular day in the program field. And we have a subject field. And we have a GM versus Pioneer Valley field. We can add grade level if you wish. But if we can do this and get the codes into these columns, we then need to change the sequence so the Pioneer Valley sequence matches the Gil Montague sequence. And then we could just merge this in any way you wish. We can merge this by function code. We can merge this by program. We can merge this by subject, any which way you want. So this is a visual of what I wrote 2 weeks ago in editing the minutes. And maybe this is clearer for those that need some kind of visual. So here's a teacher salary in Hillcrest. We'd assign a grade to that. If it's elementary, then it would be elementary. Here we have a sped teacher. So that would be coded 2. And then we could sort on all 2s.
Okay, well, I'm not sure we need to go through, I mean, is there anyone who wants more explanation as to what we're being shown here?
No, so basically the PVRS codes have been divided into columns, so they match these columns. So they're the same as GM columns, right?
Correct.
Okay, and just to be clear though, we would like grade level.
That was my concern, is that we would then be taking one line, whether it's Gil Montague or Pioneer, say this teacher salary, and splitting it into possibly 10 or 15 sub lines to be able to actually assign either grade at the elementary level or subject at the high school level. And that's what I was trying to get to as a question to try to help clarify for Mark what level of breakout in this budget piece you guys are actually looking for.
I don't see it as breaking it out. I see it as just coding. And then if it's 60% versus 40%, we can do that. That would require a second line, but it would be the same code, but either the grade level would change or the subject would change, potentially. That would be a split of assignments.
Right, so like PVRS salaries line would either be split into 2 for high school, middle school, or you would have a different model that would split it into, say, 10 or 12, because you got that many different subjects.
Right, is that a problem?
Look,
That's the
Hello,
information
Michelle.
we need. That's what we need is by subject in order to be able to support education, in my opinion.
So Mark has the detail of how many teachers we have in a separate document that comes directly from our payroll feature of how many people we have right now. And he has the same thing for Gil Montague. But the question is how do you want that to feed into this budget, or do you want them separate, which was my question earlier?
Do we want what separate?
So if Mark has the document that tells you how many Spanish teachers, French teachers, math, English, science, that links up into the budget, do you then want them to do the footwork to then take one line that has teacher salaries, say at Pioneer, and then break it out into those 10 or 12 different categories in addition to the sub document they have?
Well, I see it working the other way around. I want them to take those 10 or 12 lines from the document where everything's broken out and add them up and have that total equal the salaries line in the budget summary.
So this is the
Right.
document that Tanya is referring to. Am I correct, Tanya?
Yes, and my thought is that it's creating kind of double work. But the issue is, this is our staff salaries this year, but the budget next year is for what those staff are going to be next year. So there's also a disconnect there.
And
Well,
by the time
again,
we
we're-
get to a new district, there'd be another disconnect. We just have to start somehow.
Yeah,
Right,
I
but
mean,
what
we're
I'm
not,
saying is,
we should
if you
forget about,
total all the Berniston Elementary, say, teachers on here, they're not going to add up penny for penny to what's in the budget. And that's where my idea of taking the FTEs and breaking them down and assigning like an average salary to the teachers seems
I
like
think-
a better way to do it. I don't know.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. What we're trying to decide here is what columns we do want in this spreadsheet. What information do we need in it? And then how we get there is the next step. But what we need is
And
what we
that's-
need to address today.
right, and I say exactly how we get there is partly Matt and Mark's job. And we get to see the results when they come up with what they have. But I think, I agree with Jane. We're trying to nail down what columns we want to see. And we're going over the document that Mark prepared in which he said that somewhere that grade level, let's see, grade level is not needed by the finance subcommittee. I think we're agreeing that is not true. Grade level is needed by the subcommittee.
Look at column K, I just added it.
Okay, and we also need subject.
Column J.
Okay, so other questions? Are there other questions we have about, or that Mark and Matt have about what should be added?
Hearing none.
Everybody, Michelle, got any thoughts? David, Jane?
Mm.
Lynn? I mean, one of my thoughts is that I'd like to see something, we're not going to make all decisions up front and have Matt and Mark go away and come back and say, here you go, it's finished, right? We're going to
wouldn't
be
think so.
seeing in process work as they go along, right?
Right.
So, Matt and Mark, do you have enough to get started?
We have enough to get started. in terms of the coding of subjects, Tanya, I have a question for you. Your account number over here,
Yep.
give me a sec.
It should equal what's in the file that I gave you that has the fund assigned. There may be a couple inconsistencies because we've updated a couple account numbers, but other than that, they should tie. The only ones that won't are the ones that start with the 2, because those are, or the ones that are not Fund 0001, because those are grant funded or funded in another fund. So
So
any
for-
not the 0001 is not going to line up with that, because what you have is our general fund budget. All those other ones are funded from a different source of money.
So Jane, one of your questions was, how do we get there? So there's a common key for the general fund on this tab that has the descriptors and also
Yeah, when you get to Pioneer, we'll have the subject also.
right, because these are elementaries.
Yeah. So over column C, you have the subject
Right.
or area of,
So this crosswalk or this key for anything that's general fund beginning with a 0, we would be able to populate the subject area, the subject from here into the budget document or into the, I won't call it the budget document, but into the model that we're developing.
but Mark, what I'm saying is what you have here, if you can scroll to the top, this figure here is the current year. And there's FTEs to be assigned. So when you're breaking it out into those subjects or whatever, I guess my concern is that these amounts are not, these are this year's, not next year's amounts.
But they are the baseline. It's the closest to the baseline that we have.
Right. But you're not gonna be able to tie it dollar for dollar. That's all I'm saying.
No, I don't think we need to tie it dollar to dollar. We need to tie the FTEs
Okay.
because the dollars
Like figured it out by FTE.
will
not
come
dollars.
later based on the combining of the salary scales between the 2 districts that we have done for you twice. That would give us the ability to assign a median or a high or a low salary. That would come after. But what
So
I'm,
if you, yeah, so if you have $100,000 in salaries just for whatever, and you have 10 teachers and 2 out of 10 are math, you're gonna assign 2/10 of that to the math subject. Is that how you're going to build this?
well, initially, we got to get the 2 math teachers coded right.
Well, are we going to
Right.
code the teachers by step,
Step.
bachelor's, master's, and step?
No,
Do we need that information along with the teachers so that we know where to put them on any new salary schedule that we come up with?
All that information's in this document also, but that's what I'm saying. There's got to be a higher level allocation of being able to take this information and taking the budget he's been provided to split it out. Because you're taking a budget with next year's dollars and allocating it to this year's FTEs of people.
Mark?
Mark, I have a question, Mark.
Well, Jane,
I was going to ask Mark or Matt, if it made sense to have a separate spreadsheet that contained the teacher and their level of, I don't know what I want to call it, where they are on the salary schedule, bachelor's, master's, doctorate, you know. what
That's
they
in this
for.
document, Jane. That's what I'm trying to explain to you.
I'm,
Provided are
excuse
here.
me, Tanya, can I finish my question? Mark and Matt, would it make sense to have that information in a separate spreadsheet that we could then merge that information when we're ready to use it
We have it,
in a separate spreadsheet?
but we have it on this spreadsheet, which is
I know,
separate right
but-
now.
All
I
right,
mean, just
Mark,
strip out the non-teachers from this schedule.
Mark, I have a question. I thought one of the deliverables was, and I forget who was doing this, but you were going to, with no one losing money, you were going to create a salary schedule. And you were going to not just pick like one item and say, bachelor's 15 or something, but you're actually going to look at a complete schedule of the two districts. You're going to merge that. You're going to create a brand new schedule as if it was a new district. And with the assumption that, you have to make several assumptions. One of them obviously is no one can lose money. So you come up with whatever that new district schedule would look like. And I guess I was under the impression, I could be totally wrong, that document would then be the one that if you decided to have, two teachers in a certain area, you would be pulling them off this new salary schedule and plugging them into this new district's budget. Am I getting way ahead, or for some reason I thought was one of the end goals?
You, Alan, you just put into your own words what I said a few minutes ago. We would
Okay, good.
We would be taking the two salary schedules, combining them like we did in the past for you. And then the committee has that, subcommittee has that, and can pick whatever salary they want to assign now that the two salary schedules have been merged into one.
Okay, thank you.
And I would add the same for fringe benefits,
Perfect.
but that's later.
Yeah.
That's later. And do we all understand that this schedule has the steps in it in column K? And it has the salary amounts that are today's, not fiscal 22. That the fiscal 22 budget has taken these people and added the steps and lanes, et cetera, to reflect fiscal 22. And thus, we can't use this schedule to add up to marry and prove out to the budget schedules because they're two different fiscal years.
Is there not an equivalent schedule for FY22?
Not until all the staff is in place. Do you know how many vacancies our districts have right now because of COVID? That's why it's not equivalent. There is a column in here that does say projected column, but it doesn't provide the amount until the year is completely closed out and the payroll is rolled, which doesn't happen until June. And again, until you actually have those people in those positions and know who's going to be where, there wouldn't be an equivalent of this for next year.
So let's say hypothetically that in our baseline, we've got 4 German teachers between the two schools. And then the education committee says we're going to need 6 German teachers. So in the tool, in the budget module, we would add 2 more German teachers. And then somebody's going to decide what salary would be assigned to these 2 teachers or for all 6 teachers. And we have the benefit then of having the salary schedules combined. And you could take an average salary, probably more than likely an average salary for the 6 German teachers.
Well, okay, I'm starting to see that we may have 2 different things that have to somehow be combined here, which I don't think is necessarily going to be a big problem. But we have the issue that we have existing teachers at existing steps who, if the district is combined, will be, assuming they want to stay, will be kept on and cannot lose money in any new salary schedule, right?
Correct.
And then we have hypothetical new teachers brought on to enhance course offerings who are not assumed to be at any particular step. So as I see it, by we, I mean Mark and Matt, will need to take the existing teachers, figure out what they would be making in a combined district salary schedule, come up with a cost of what that is. If that cost is based on FY21 and it has to be adjusted to apply to FY22, then we'll have to talk about a good way to do that. I assume that there'll be different options and we can talk about, what the best way to do that is, but we have to basically somehow deal with the fact that we have existing people at existing steps. And, hypothetically, if everybody's at the top step, then that's where they're going to be in a new district.
Mike, I believe
The
we
separate
did that.
question is if we then add, to talk to Mark's example, if we got 4 German teachers, those 4 German teachers are at specific steps right now, will be at a specific places in a combined salary schedule, and that does need to be reflected. Adding 2 German teachers to the mix, those 2 will not be at any particular step. And as a separate exercise, our subcommittee will say, well, let's assume for any new teacher, well, they'll be at such and such a step and such a health benefit, and that's going to be the cost, whether it's a German teacher or an English teacher or a math teacher or whatever. So I see those as being 2 separate things. So it won't be whatever we do for those 4 we'll also do for the 2, or whatever we do for the 2 we'll also do for the 4. We're going to have to do different things for the 4 from what we do for the 2.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
To Mike, as a point, to go to that 4 example, that would come out of the combined salary analysis. That's what we did last time. And you're right, with the 2 new teachers in our example, they're not coming in at a particular step. And you would have the combined salary scale available to you to assign a salary and fringe benefits to those 2 new teachers.
Right. So we would be essentially in talking about that, we would be having 2 different things that would then get added together to form a total for 6 German teachers.
Right. So Tanya, I just want to validate that column B would be the link to allow us to assign the subjects for the teachers in the general fund.
Correct. And I just put a comment in the chat actually, because I provided you with another document that has the tabs that come straight from our FY22 budget that has how we budgeted the salaries. And it does have, if a teacher is assigned, it has their name. So you could link it to this to help out with, the linking between the 2. And if it's vacant, it has vacant next to it, and it has what that average salary is that we assign.
What was the name of the file?
It should have been,
Salary schedule on FTE?
I'll tell you the name of it. Give me just a second. I've created a lot of documents this week.
I know.
It
Thank you.
is. It's under my budget, so bear with me for a second here. I provided it actually to Berniston for a meeting, so it might be in a different folder. Bear with me a second and I will get it. I just
Okay.
need to find the right.
So while she's doing that, want to go back.
Mark, quick question.
Go ahead, Alan.
So would you then be able to take the salary schedule that you're putting together for the new district? And then if there was an assumption that, let's say there was a 2.5% increase, just to make up a number, or 2%, you could add that to a column and it would just compute the new salary schedule across the board, or is that taking it too far?
No, it's not taking it too far. We can add that. And keep in mind that you want a multi-year projection on this and the ability to increase salaries by a certain percent in each of the next 5 years.
So Mark, real quick, the name of that document was Salaries Detail Budget Backup Berniston Request, because again, that's who I created it for. So I just forwarded that along and it breaks it down. In the elementary, it has the IAs, they're broken down by school, and there's a column that tells you what grade they're for. And the same thing with PBRS. But the PBRS salaries detail just has the person. So you would have to do, you know, VLOOKUPs or whatever between this sheet and the one that you have up on the screen right now to assign the proper subject to the right salary that's budgeted for FY22. But I think with Excel, that might be an easy enough task to do. So just a thought, like I said, I'm just thinking of how this all works together and the easiest way for you to do this in the most accurate way as well, knowing the documents.
Which email did you send it to me?
Sorry, I keep muting myself. I sent it to you on April 28th at 11:18 a.m. 6 days ago, and it came with the PBRS staff listing without the fund. So it was right before the one that I sent to you. That was the day that we actually spoke last week.
I don't want to take up the committee's time with that.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's just a thought to
I
make
think
your life a little easier.
I think from a comfort level, this layout can work and can give you the baseline. And we have more realization that we can actually populate these columns with correct information. But I need some feedback from the committee that this is the direction you want to go.
Well, I think we've been saying that.
Okay.
Yes.
Does anybody have something to add to that? I mean, I think we've talked about all the columns that we need, assuming that STEP is now included in that list.
Mike,
And
I'd like to hear from the other members of the committee. You and I are doing a lot of talking. I'm not hearing much from them.
you're right. Lynn, you got something to add? Mark, you want to stop sharing? You want to give me back the host?
Mike, I didn't get an answer to the question. So Mark said he could do a
Hang on a second.
percentage and do a 5 year.
Sorry, Lynn is trying to say something, but she's muted.
Okay. Len, you're muted.
Lynn, you're still muted.
Can the host unmute her?
I don't see how.
No,
I don't think he can if she's muted herself.
No, I see that she is muted
Well-
over here, but I don't see.
Hey, just one quick comment about your baseline. I don't know if you remember, but back
Yeah, it
originally.
wouldn't-
Oh,
Here we go.
I'm okay. I'm sorry it took such a struggle to get unmuted. Helps when the mouse is aimed in the right direction. But anyway, from what I'm understanding, I think I understand that you've arrived at the flexibility that you need. And this is a little bit beyond my ken. So I'm basically listening to the people that understand and know how to do these things. And it sounds like you've come to a reasonable, how you say, decision about what should be included and what gives you the flexibility to maneuver your documentation and your figures. So I'm happy with it.
Okay, Alan, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to see what the subcommittee was thinking about having Mark create the column that we could get a 5-year projection with the flexibility. We could put a 1.5% increase in, or 2% or whatever, into a salary schedule just to see how that would play out in the bottom line. It would make sense if we have any intent of looking at that in the long term, this would be the time to include it.
I agree.
We build the model and then we can test sensitivity of variables. So we're trying to build a model. Tanya's expressed, concerns that we get an accurate model of what is, and that would be a good place to start. But we aren't going to just build off of that. But it's a model, and that's what a spreadsheet's for.
yeah, I'm going to suggest, Alan, that that's on the to-do list, but not immediately. We gotta pull these two budgets together in a simple yet concise one district baseline. And we're going to have some smoothing to do and some reconciliation to do, probably to FTEs. And then we can address the going forward.
Michelle?
No, I'm fine with that. I've been listening, even though you haven't seen me. I've been on different technical things, my phone, my iPad, and my laptop. So I've been following along.
You comfortable?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yep.
David, did you have more to say?
No, I hope it brings Pioneer closer to using DESI's budget categories. And the first value, the 01, to me, that's the general fund.
Yes.
And in my town, the 02 would be, well, my CARES grant is an 02. So we're going to pick up the off general fund stuff at Pioneer, like tuition or choice funds, etc., will be reflected in that first piece.
So I think the answer to your question is yes. The key on Pioneer will only work for the general fund. And then Tanya and I and Matt would have to look at the non-general fund funded positions And once we see how many they are and who they are, then we can code them separately. But I think it's important to have a full complement of FTEs that are both general fund and non-general fund funded, and understand from where the funding is coming.
And Mark,
And-
that spreadsheet that I sent you that I just told you about, that's in that email, that actually, if there is a salary that's funded from two sources, you will have the full salary in the FY22 budget column. You'll have a non-budget column that
Yep.
adds up to those other funds, and then your net will be what you see in the FY22 budget document that you have.
And if you remember in our phase 2 report, we listed out all the non-general fund funded items. It wasn't just in the salaries, it was also in several of the expense lines as well.
Yes.
Jane, did you have more?
No,
Okay.
Greg,
So-
you had your hand up.
I'm just waiting for Mike to call on me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Greg, I didn't see you. I apologize.
I thought he didn't see you, so.
I did not see you.
I know, I was making room for the committee members, that's fine. No, I was just, are we making the assumption, to get back to what you and Jane were discussing earlier, with the baseline, I'm assuming we're not going to be including efficiencies in union contracted faculty. I think that gets very difficult, which is why originally when Michael Sullivan projected out a combined district, that he didn't do that, because you have to then go into contract negotiations. And so he assumed that the faculty, teaching faculty that's unionized, would remain at the same level. That doesn't mean that FTEs don't get shifted around, or responsibilities don't get shifted around. And if you look back at the original grant, or excuse me, the original report that was done, most of the subject areas, there was often added either, maybe a part-time or a half FTE or a full FTE, sometimes even two, in a subject area where he thought, might be applicable. But I think we have to assume that the efficiencies are going to come from administrative, from central office. That was his assumptions going into it. Am I correct with that?
Well, that sounds reasonable. And it suggests to me that knowing what the number of the number and type of FTE necessary to replicate the baseline, which is smaller than the number of FTEs that are currently at the two districts, would be useful. And we would then know sort of the additional FTEs available, both number and type, for enhanced programming.
Right, and I think you're good.
Because it seems like that would sort of suggest that enhanced programming would be most, how shall I say, feasible, using the skills of existing FTEs.
Correct, yeah.
If we don't need them all to teach what's being taught now, what else can they do? And as Jane said, you can't, if you got an English teacher, you can't add an AP physics course.
Correct, but if you combine the districts, you're going to be combining, often half-filled classrooms. So you're going to wind up with
Right.
teachers in those subject areas with the freedom to actually teach another course. So yeah.
Right.
Okay,
And we would
good.
need to know what subject areas those are, basically.
Well, a lot of times they'll just be an elective in that field, because that's what's missing often. Like in English, they
Right.
often can add electives in the field, and that's not often what's being, when you're facing declining enrollments. That's what goes.
Right. No, but I mean, we would need to know that we had additional capacity, so much additional capacity in English,
Right.
so much additional capacity in different languages, science, music.
I just
whatever.
wanted to make sure that, because there was talk about, efficiencies in teaching, and I think that's
Right.
not what we want to do. I think it's good to know if that was possible, but I think that's sort of beyond the scope of the baseline. So, okay, thanks.
Right. No, I know.
Why is that?
Excuse me, you heard that from me. And so I will just say that I stand corrected. I think you make a good point, Greg, that will not happen. So, but that shifts my thinking a little bit. Did I hear David?
Yeah, how do we know that? I mean, that could be one of the great benefits of this combination would be to get to scale. We don't know that that's true or untrue. At least I don't. I haven't studied it.
It's beyond our scope, though, is what I'm saying. It's not that it's not possible, David. It is. It absolutely is possible. But that's beyond. That's a negotiation between. That's a contract negotiation that is completely out of our hands. We can't say we recommend you cut this many teachers.
No, when we don't.
If we do a combined district, we're not going to be keeping teachers we don't need. If you think we are, we got a war to fight.
It's not about that, David. It's about looking at the full-time, the FTEs, and then creating enhancements based on where room opens up in a particular schedule.
I don't think that's where we're at. Our job is to produce what we believe is the best new district, and then figure out how the current district facilities, employees, anything else fits into that new picture. Maybe there are teachers out there that we don't need, but maybe they have skills in another area so they can be switched over. But that is not the question we're answering now. We're developing a great district. That's my opinion.
Mike, can I just bring up a concern? And this is just something for you guys to think about. And I think Mark probably already has this in the back of his mind, maybe not. Speaking to the fact that we've got, and I know this has been, the two biggest inconsistencies, and I've said this multiple times, is the pay scale and the health insurance thing. As we get further through this process, which might be 2 years down the road from now, I think it's important to at some point think about how those will eventually get on the same level, because I just worry from a teacher morale standpoint, if you have, say, 5 middle school teachers from the Gil-Montague district and 5 from the Pioneer that end up making the 6-town regional district, and you have one teacher that's been with Gil-Montague for 10 years making, I'll say $70,000 a year, and you have a teacher from Pioneer teaching the same subject with the same years making $10,000 less, that creates some significant inequalities, and I think it's going to create some serious morale issues. So just something to keep in the back of your guys' heads, as if we're thinking about just keeping the current union contracts and leaving salaries as is. I don't know that that's necessarily gonna fly.
I don't think we're talking about doing that, Tanya.
Well, that's what Greg just mentioned, is that
I think we're talking. I mean, we talked
current-
about coming up with a combined schedule.
right, but it would
And,
Montague at the Gil-Montague and the Pioneer at the Pioneer, which I'm saying is I don't think that's a good way to approach it, because that's going to create some serious morale and equity issues amongst the staff.
well, okay, I hear the concern. I do think it's a little down the road. And
Right, and like I said, just something to think about.
yeah,
That's the
but
only reason I'm putting it out there.
I'd like to make sure that the stuff we have right in front of us gets resolved. Because I've heard Jane describe her vision of what we're doing, and I've heard David describe his vision of what we're doing, and Greg described his vision, and they're all a little different. And I'm not sure we have to come to complete agreement today. But I wonder if Mark and Matt feel that they have enough to go away and actually produce something for us to look at in either a week or 2 weeks.
So can you see the screen?
Yes.
I've added grade level
Yes.
throughout the whole document. So our next task would be to begin to populate these blank columns, and then to align the two districts' code structure so they are aligned. And we can eliminate a couple of the columns and streamline this. I can't tell you how long that will take. I sent this file to Joanne and to Tanya this morning, and I have not heard back from Joanne. So I need to get her comments and thoughts, and then we have to start coding this.
Okay. Once you have that coded, do you think you'll be in a position to come up with a first pass at a FY22 budget for a combined district?
Yeah, we get it. So based on our discussion today, with Tanya and the key, we have a way of populating some of these columns for the general fund. Then we have to deal with the non-general fund positions. With Gil Montague, I'm hoping there's a similar key, but I haven't had that discussion with Joanne.
Okay, but assuming the answer is yes, are you in a position to come up with a first pass at an FY22 budget?
We will be. The question is that in a week or 2 weeks?
Okay.
And I can't answer that right now.
Right. Okay. Well, that's fine. How does the committee feel about saying that we will plan to meet? Let me lay out my feeling first and just sort of make a proposal, which is that I would like to see that combined FY22 budget. And I'm not sure if it's useful for us to meet before that's available, because I'm not sure what we would talk about. Maybe somebody else has some ideas about what we could usefully talk about. But I would like to get that budget, or at least the first pass. It probably need not be the final copy. Maybe it shouldn't be the final copy. It'll be something for us to look at and say either, yeah, this looks like it's in the right direction, or what about this and what about that? And I'd like to be able to look it over before our next meeting, so that if we were to receive it, say on a Friday, we could meet the following Tuesday. And if that's 2 weeks from now, that's fine with me. If it's not until 3 weeks from now, well, we're already at May 4th. That gets us to May 25th. And there's other things that Mark's supposed to be working on. So maybe he can make some progress on them, but I don't want to leave too much time if what we're doing is sort of confirming that things are okay. So I'd like to kind of plan on having something to look at for a meeting 2 weeks from now, but hold off on meeting next week.
Agreed.
Okay. Jane, do you have a thought?
I'd just like to know what Mark and Matt think.
So
2 weeks or.
we need at least a week, if not more, to finish the coding on this, align the streams on both districts, and then come up with a combined budget. The hanging chad there is the non-general fund positions. In the meantime, we have to start work on enrollment, Chapter 70. So there's other things we can get started on from a design point of view. That
Mark, do we need to discuss the non-general fund, because those are an integral part of the education process?
so go ahead, Jane.
Well, it just seems like if they're not general fund and they go away, then we don't really have the full budget. Even though they come out of a different pot of gold, they're still part of our education system. So I don't know how we handle that, but we have to populate it someplace.
Do we all agree it should be in the baseline?
Yes.
Yeah, but
don't
you've
see why
spoken
not.
several times of non-general fund positions, but with my knowledge of Pioneer pays its retiree health insurance bill off of, not on the general fund. That's a major cost. We want to make sure we pick it up.
David, can I just clarify? It's not our retiree stuff. It's our active health insurance that is covered by the school choice funds that you're referring to. It's not the.
Okay, so,
retiree.
but it is,
But it is
some
a huge
serious
chunk.
money.
It's gonna be about 450,000 a year moving forward if our choice in starts to stabilize.
I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't matter whether it's general fund or some other fund. It's part of our educational expense and it should be included.
Yes. Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
We are then, though, roaming off into an area where in some instances it's part of our budget. And in some instances it's extras, grant funded extras that may not persist. And we ought to distinguish between.
Don't we have a column that can handle that?
We
And
have a-
there already is.
Matt?
Well, we have this column that distinguishes funds.
Funds. Yeah.
Yeah, so why can't that handle the,
It can handle it, but we've got different codes for two different districts that we have to smooth out. It's just an
guess-
extra step in smoothing it out.
okay. I think that we need to have that in the picture. And I leave it to you and Matt to figure out how.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Agree.
Well, thank you for the flexibility.
Well, that's why we're
Do
paying
you know
you.
how many times somebody said that to me in my career? So I know exactly what you're really thinking.
No, seriously.
So is there a reason for us to plan to meet next week?
No.
Doesn't sound it.
Okay, I'd like to plan to meet in 2 weeks and see what they've come up with.
Okay.
And agreeing right away that it won't be complete. The question is how incomplete and what new questions have come up that need to be addressed.
Sounds good to me.
Does that sound good?
Yes.
And can Mark give, how do you say, reports on the things that he's working on and just give us a status report on the other things?
Yes. What do you mean, right now or in 2 weeks?
No, 2 weeks.
Okay. Yes.
And by then, I hope we'll hear back from DESE on the Student Opportunities Act numbers. By then, no, it'll be too early for NESDAQ to report back on enrollment numbers, but we can give you progress.
Okay. No, that's all we'd be looking for
Okay,
is
Mark.
progress.
Are you going to assume that rural aid is in, even though right now it's out?
I'm not going to assume anything on rural aid. If it comes in, you can add a line item in the budget for revenues. If it doesn't come in, then
Okay.
we don't change the revenues.
Okay.
And I think in our first report, Tanya, you had 57,000 in rural aid. And we noted that the district has 57,000 in rural aid, but it's not included in the budget document.
Mark, can you give me back the host?
I thought I did. I thought I made it
Okay.
multiple. Yeah, multiple participants can share simultaneously.
No, not share screen. Make me the host.
I just made one person.
If you
See if you
click,
can do it.
if you click on the, up in the right corner of Mike's box, you'll see the three little dots. You can make him host again.
So I did that earlier and I couldn't, oh yeah, there it is. You're all set, Mike.
Takes it a second or two.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, good.
So did Tanya hear the question that you asked, Mark? I don't,
So I'll repeat it, that in our first report, I remember Pioneer receiving about 57,000 in rural aid. And we noted it as a footnote to the budget without including it. That 57,000 was available. Anything else for this evening?
Well, I do have one quick thing, hopefully it's quick, which is there's an issue with one of the documents that we got from Pioneer. And I guess it wasn't supposed to be shared in the form that it came through. And I'd just like to confirm that my understanding is that that will not happen in the future, that any documents that we get as a subcommittee are okay to be shared.
Okay.
And that if that document should not be shared, then I can remove it from the Google Drive. But if it's important to replace it, somebody should send me a replacement.
if that's the document that has the names and the
Names.
insurance policies that they're on, then
Yeah.
no, we should not have that available to the public.
Right.
Right, that makes perfect sense to me. I just don't really understand why I received it. So I'll just make that comment because I was asked to change it and I don't think that's my job and I don't want to take on that responsibility. So I'd like to say that any documents we receive can be posted. They should be checked by somebody beforehand to make sure that can happen. So anybody have anything else? Well, hearing and seeing nothing. We'll meet, I'll set up a meeting for 2 weeks and to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, good meeting.
Okay,
meeting.
roll call vote. Jane Dutcher,
Aye.
Alan Genovese,
Yes,
David Young,
Aye.
Michelle Girusso,
Yes.
Lynn Reynolds, Mike
We're still
Naughton.
adjourning even if she votes no.
Okay. Mike Naughton is aye, and Greg Snedeker, are you still here?
Aye. Yeah, aye. Can't see me,
Okay.
Mike, can you?
I
Thank you
think
all.
thank you.
Okay, well,
Thanks,
thank you, everybody, for coming, and see you in 2 weeks. And
Mark and Matt, thank you so much for the work you're doing.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
And for putting up with us.
Perfect time.